The alien girl in the wreck. Captain Reese was not supposed to land on that moon. His mission was simple: scan for fuel, map the area, and return to base. But something pulled his ship off course. A strange signal. A soft, repeating sound. It wasn't a voice, but it felt alive. He followed the signal to a small moon with red rocks and a thin mist in the air. The place was quiet. Too quiet. As he landed, his ship's sensors picked up a crash nearby. Metal pieces, burned engines, and something moving. Reese grabbed his oxygen mask and stepped outside. The ground cracked under his boots. The crash site was just 100 steps away. He found a broken alien ship, half buried in dust. Its sides were torn open like paper. There was smoke, but no fire. The front glass was shattered. Inside, he saw her. A girl. Not human. She was lying still, half covered in strange wires. Her skin glowed faint blue, and her hair floated gently in the air, even without wind. She looked young. Maybe 18. Maybe 100. Reese couldn't tell. Her chest was rising slowly. She was alive. Reese leaned closer. Then, suddenly, her eyes opened, bright silver, glowing like stars. She stared at him, scared. She whispered one word: "Run." Reese stepped back. What? But her eyes closed again. Her body shook a little, then went still. Reese checked her pulse. Weak, but there. He looked around. No other signs of life. No noise. No weapons. But something felt wrong. His suit scanner beeped. There was something inside her, moving. Reese frowned. What the hell? The scanner didn't show bones or organs. Instead, there was a pulsing light inside her chest. It was not flesh, not blood, not even metal. It was energy. Alive. He had never seen anything like it. He looked at the girl again. She looked peaceful now, like sleeping. But that light inside her, it was glowing brighter. And it was growing. Suddenly, a deep boom echoed behind him. The crashed ship shook. One of the engines lit up for just a second and exploded in sparks. Reese didn't wait. He picked the girl up carefully. She was light, too light, like air. He carried her to his ship, running fast. As he placed her gently on the medical bed, her hand gripped his arm. He froze. She opened her eyes again. This time, her voice was clearer, shaky, but stronger. Don't let them take it. Reese looked at her. Take what? She didn't answer. Her hand fell back. She passed out again. Reese stared at her for a long moment. Then his ship's alarm blared. Unknown ship approaching. He ran to the control panel. A dark shape was coming down from the sky. Big, fast, not human. It was a warship. Reese's heart pounded. This wasn't random. Someone had followed the signal. Someone wanted this girl. He looked at her once more. Her skin was glowing brighter now. The thing inside her was calling to them. Reese grabbed the controls and lifted off. The alien warship turned sharply and began chasing him. He pushed his ship harder, through the clouds of the red moon, out into the cold of space. The other ship followed closely. Too close. What the hell is going on? He muttered. The girl whispered again in her sleep. It's not a baby, she said softly. It's a gem. A living one. Reese didn't understand. But one thing was clear. He was now in the middle of something big. Something powerful. And something dangerous. As stars blinked around his ship, and the enemy warship stayed close behind, Reese knew one thing for sure. Whatever was inside that girl was not from this world. And it was about to change everything. She's not what she seems. The stars outside the window looked calm. But inside the ship, Captain Reese felt anything but calm. He had just risked his life to save an alien girl he didn't even know. Now a massive warship was chasing him through deep space, and the girl was lying unconscious on his medical bed. glowing like some kind of angel, or maybe a bomb. Reese stared at her from the pilot's seat. The scanners still showed something strange inside her chest. A living, moving energy source. It pulsed with light, blue, gold, and sometimes a soft violet. His ship's voice broke the silence. Object inside the female is not organic, not metallic, not any known material. Then what is it? Reese asked. The AI didn't answer. He walked back to the girl and looked at her again. She was breathing. Her skin looked smooth but almost see-through now. He could see little lights dancing under her skin, like tiny stars in a night sky. Suddenly, her eyes opened. No warning, no sound, just wide silver eyes staring at him. Reese stepped back. You're awake. The girl didn't move. She studied him. Then she spoke, voice soft but clear. You should have left me behind. Reese raised an eyebrow. You're welcome, by the way. She looked around the room slowly, then winced as she tried to sit up. He helped her gently. I didn't mean to bring trouble, she said, but now that you're involved, there's no turning back. Reese crossed his arms. So, you gonna tell me what's going on? Why is a warship chasing you? And what's inside you? The girl stayed quiet for a moment. Then, finally, she spoke. My name is Zora. I am not like the others from my planet. I was born with something inside me. Something rare. Something forbidden. She looked down at her chest. I carry a living gem. Reese blinked. A gem. Not just any gem, she said. It's called Vian. It's alive. It grows inside a host, like me. Only one is born every 10,000 years. And whoever controls it can control minds, machines, and sometimes, even time. Reese sat down slowly. You're telling me you've got a mind-controlling gem inside you? Yes, she said, and now it's almost ready to be born. He rubbed his face. This was beyond crazy. He was a space pilot, not a soldier or a scientist. He delivered fuel and supplies. He didn't fight wars or protect alien princesses. Why are they chasing you? He asked. Zora looked at him, her voice trembling. Because the gem only works for the one it chooses, and it hasn't chosen them. Reese was silent. The lights on the ship dimmed slightly. Outside, the warship was still following, but keeping distance now, like it was watching, waiting. How long do we have? Reese asked. Zora closed her eyes. Not long. It's waking up. You saw it. You felt it, didn't you? Reese remembered that strange warmth in the air when she first arrived. That feeling in his chest, like something ancient, had just noticed him. Yeah, he said quietly. I felt it. Zara touched the side of her neck. A small tattoo glowed there, a symbol of her people. A spiral inside a circle. Reese noticed her hand was shaking. I've kept it hidden for years, she said. Running. Hiding. The gem inside me is pure energy. It can become anything. It can build or destroy. Reese leaned forward. So what does it want? Zora looked into his eyes. It wants a host. Suddenly, the ship's alarm rang again. Multiple objects approaching. Enemy drones detected. Reese ran to the pilot's seat. Small ships, fast and armed, were flying from the warship behind. He had minutes, maybe seconds, before they reached him. He turned to Zora. Can you fight? She laughed weakly. I'm the treasure, not the weapon. Reese sighed. Figures. He hit the controls. His ship jumped into a cloud of space debris, spinning between broken satellite parts and old battle wreckage. He needed time. He needed answers. But mostly, he needed help. Zara walked slowly to the window. Her eyes glowed brighter now. It's waking, she whispered. It feels your heart. Reese turned. What does that mean? Zara faced him. For the first time, she looked scared. Truly scared. It means. She paused. It might choose you. Before Reese could answer, the lights on the ship flickered. A deep hum filled the air. His chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on his soul. Then he saw it. A soft golden light floated out of Zora's chest, just for a second. It hovered between them, pulsing gently. Then it rushed toward him, faster than lightning. It passed through his body, and everything went dark. The hunters are here. Silence. Darkness. Then, a single breath. Captain Reese opened his eyes with a sharp gasp. His body felt strange, lighter, warmer, alive in a way he had never felt before. He sat up slowly, his hands glowing faint gold. "What happened to me?" he whispered. Across the room, Zora was sitting against the wall, her eyes locked on him. Her face was pale, but calm. "It chose you," she said. Reese looked down at his hands. Golden sparks danced across his skin, then disappeared. His heart was racing. He could hear things, soft whispers in the ship walls, the hum of energy, even the slow beat of Zora's pulse from across the room. "I can hear everything," he muttered. "I can feel everything." Zora nodded. "The vine has entered you. You are now its host." He stood slowly, wobbling a little. "You said it controls minds, machines, time. What does that mean for me?" Zora's eyes narrowed. "It means you're a target now. The hunters will stop at nothing. And if they can't take it from you alive, they'll take it after you're dead." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. An explosion lit up the windows. Reese rushed to the controls. Multiple boarding crafts detected. The ship's eye warned. External doors breached. Intruders inbound. Reese cursed under his breath. "They found us." Zora stood, her glow returning. "You need to listen. The vine won't protect you forever. It's testing you. If you fail, it will leave." "Great," Reese muttered. No pressure. Another blast shook the ship. A red warning light began flashing across the ceiling. The sound of metal feet echoed from the back hallway. Reese ran to the weapons locker. He grabbed a pulse rifle and tossed a small energy pistol to Zora. She shook her head. "That won't stop them." "You got something better?" he asked. "I have this," she said softly, placing a hand over her chest. "But it's not mine anymore." The door at the far end of the corridor blasted open. Tall, armored figures marched in. Cold silver suits, glowing red visors. No faces. No words. Just weapons raised and ready. Zora pulled Reese back behind cover. "These are the mindless. They serve the Collector." "Who's the Collector?" Reese asked. "The one who sent the warship. He's been hunting me since I was 5. The first mindless stepped forward and fired. A bolt of purple energy shot past Reese's head, burning a hole in the wall. He peeked out and fired back. The blast hit the soldier square in the chest, but it didn't fall. Instead, it paused and laughed. Not with a voice, but in Reese's mind. "You carry the light now, human," the voice said. "Hand it over, and your death will be quick." Reese's skin crawled. "Did you hear that?" he asked Zora. She nodded. "They're speaking directly into your mind now. They know you're the host." The soldiers rushed forward. Reese fired again, this time hitting one in the leg. It stumbled. Zora threw a small blue sphere that exploded into electric light, knocking 2 more down. But they kept coming. Then it happened. Reese raised his hand, and light burst from his palm. Golden and sharp, it flew like a spear and hit the nearest soldier. The mindless froze, then shattered into pieces. Zora gasped. "You used the vine." "I didn't mean to," Reese said, breathing hard. "It just happened." The other soldiers backed away. Then, as if controlled by one mind, they turned and walked back into the corridor. "Why are they retreating?" Reese asked. Zora frowned. "They're not done. They're making room." Suddenly, the ship shook again, this time harder. The floor cracked. The lights dimmed. Then, silence. Something much bigger had landed. Zara's face turned pale. He's here. From the hallway, heavy footsteps echoed. Slow, powerful, not metal. Flesh. Then the shape appeared. 8 feet tall, wrapped in deep red robes, a helmet of black bone, a long staff that hissed with dark energy. The Collector. Rhys raised his weapon. The figure stopped. I don't want your life, human, the Collector said, his voice smooth and deep. I want what's inside you. Rhys stood firm. Not for sale. The Collector chuckled. You don't even know what it is. You don't know its history, its cost. Rhys felt the Vian inside him stir. It was awake, watching, waiting. I know enough, Rhys said. I know it didn't choose you. The Collector's voice darkened. Then you will burn with it. He raised his staff. Rhys felt a sharp pain in his head, like needles in his brain. He dropped to his knees. Zara cried out and threw herself between them, her body glowing bright blue. The Collector stepped back, shielding his face. You still protect him, he growled. I protect the Vian's choice, she shouted. And it didn't choose you. The Collector screamed, a sound that cracked glass. The Vian reacted. A golden burst exploded from Rhys's chest, blinding and hot. The Collector staggered backward, his robes burning. His staff broke in two. The ship groaned, alarms blaring again. Rhys stood up slowly, his eyes glowing bright gold. You want it, he said. Come and get it. The Collector growled once more, then vanished in a flash of dark smoke. The mindless followed, disappearing one by one. Then, silence. Only the sound of Rhys breathing. Zara stood beside him, her hand on his arm. You're not just a pilot anymore, she said softly. You're something much more now. Rhys looked at his reflection in the glass. The Vian was inside him, and everything had changed. Birth of the Gem. Captain Rhys had never felt pain like this before. It started as a burning in his chest, deep and slow, like fire trapped under his skin. But now it was spreading through his whole body, crawling into his arms, legs, and even his eyes. He stumbled into the ship's medbay, gripping the wall with trembling hands. Zara rushed to his side. It's starting, she said, her voice serious. Rhys could barely speak. What's happening to me? She helped him onto the bed. His skin was glowing now, not just a soft gold like before, but bright and sharp, almost too bright to look at. Light leaked from his fingertips, his eyes, his veins. Zara's face was pale. The Vian is ready to be born. Rhys gasped. Born. I thought it already chose me. It did, she said. But that was just the connection, the bond. Now, it wants to be more. It wants to become. Rhys felt something moving inside his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Faster, stronger, louder. Then he screamed. His back arched as the light exploded from his body, forming patterns in the air, symbols, stars, and unknown languages floating above him. The ship's walls vibrated. The lights flickered. And then, silence. A tiny orb of golden light rose from Rhys's chest. Zara stepped back, covering her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. The light hovered, then began to grow. Slowly, it took shape, not solid, not smoke, but something in between. And then it spoke, a voice that sounded like music and thunder at the same time. I am Vian. Rhys opened his eyes, now glowing pure white. He could see everything. The ship's power lines, Zara's heartbeat, the echoes of time itself running in every wall. He sat up, weak but alive. Vian floated above them, now the size of a basketball, glowing with golden veins and shifting colors. Rhys stared at it. You were inside her. Now you're inside me. And now you're this. Vian pulsed once. I was a seed. Now I bloom. Zara wiped her eyes. "You're beautiful and dangerous," Vian replied. "Many will hunt me, but only one will be chosen." Rhys looked at Zora. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, the ship's alarm blared again. "Warning. Time distortion detected." Rhys jumped up. "What?" The stars outside were moving, faster than light, spinning like water down a drain. Zora looked terrified. "They're trying to trap us in a time bubble. It's the Collector's last move." Rhys turned to Vian. "Can you stop it?" The gem spoke slowly. "I cannot, but I can protect you, if you pass the test." "What test?" "You must choose, power or peace, control or freedom. If your heart is true, I will become part of you forever. If not, I will leave." Rhys felt the pressure in the shipbuilding. Zora's voice broke. "If the time bubble closes, we'll be trapped forever in this moment. We'll never escape." Rhys's thoughts spun wildly. He remembered his old life, flying cargo, working alone, keeping his head down. No responsibility, no danger. And now, he had the most powerful living gem in the galaxy hovering in front of him, asking him to choose. He looked at Zora. "I don't want power," he said. "I never did." Zora stepped closer. "Then choose peace. Choose something bigger than yourself." The vine moved toward him, hovering just inches from his chest. "Then speak the truth," it whispered. "Speak your heart." Rhys closed his eyes. "I want to protect what matters, not rule it. I want to help those who have nothing. I want to give hope, not fear. I want to be better." Silence followed. Then Vian glowed bright, blinding. It rushed into Rhys's chest again, but this time it didn't hurt. It felt like warmth, like purpose, like clarity. Zora smiled through her tears. "It chose you again." Rhys opened his eyes. They were no longer white or gold. They were filled with galaxies. Moments later, the ship stopped shaking. The stars outside returned to normal. The time bubble collapsed before closing. Vian had saved them, but it had done more than that. Rhys could feel it inside him now, not just as power, but as part of his soul. A voice, a guide, a light. The ship's eye returned online. Warning cleared. Time stabilized. No threats detected. Rhys looked at his hands, still glowing, but now calm. Zora touched his arm gently. "You're the bearer now. The Vian will live through you." Rhys nodded slowly. "What now?" Zora looked out the window. "Now, we run, we hide, we plan. And when the time is right, we fight." Rhys turned to the stars. "Then let's begin." Rhys the Chosen. The stars no longer looked the same to Rhys. Before, they were just lights in the dark, silent, distant, and cold. But now they whispered to him. He could feel their age, their heat, their stories. He sat alone in the ship's observatory, hands resting on his knees, eyes glowing faintly. The Vian was quiet now, sleeping inside him. But its presence was always there, like a second heartbeat, deep and calm. Zora entered the room quietly. "You haven't slept in 2 days," she said gently. Rhys didn't turn. "I don't feel tired anymore." Zora sat beside him. "That's not a good thing." He gave her a tired smile. "Everything's different now. I can read signals before they're sent. I can see thoughts behind people's eyes. I touched a broken circuit yesterday, and it fixed itself." Zora looked at him with a mix of wonder and worry. The Vian gives, but it also takes. It's not a gift. It's a responsibility. Rhys stood up, pacing slowly. "I didn't ask for this." "No one ever does," she said. "But it chose you." He stared out the glass. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" Zora stood beside him, her voice soft but strong. "Then everything dies. But I don't think you will. The Vian doesn't make mistakes." 3 days later, they arrived at an old space station, forgotten, floating in a dead orbit around a cracked planet. No signals, no power, just silence and dust. But Reese saw more. "This place is hiding something," he said. Zara raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" He closed his eyes. "Because I can hear the walls breathing." The Vian guided him, gently, without words. He touched a metal panel, and it lit up. Doors opened. Lights blinked alive. They walked inside the ancient station, their boots echoing in the dark halls. The control room was still intact. Zara scanned the console. This station used to be part of the Resistance, before they fell. Reese nodded slowly. "They built a safe room here, for the gem. For me." "How do you know that?" He pointed at a blinking symbol on the wall, a spiral inside a circle. "The same mark on your neck," he said. "Your people left this message." Zara's hand touched her glowing tattoo. Then they knew the Vian would return. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind them. "You shouldn't be here." Reese turned fast, weapon raised. An old man stood in the doorway, wearing a torn captain's jacket, one arm replaced with metal. His face was scared, but his eyes were sharp. "I thought this place was forgotten," Zara whispered. The man chuckled. "Forgotten by most. Not by me." He stepped into the room. "I'm Commander Jalen, last of the Resistance, or what's left of it." Reese lowered his weapon. "We didn't come to fight. We're running." Jalen looked at Reese's eyes. "No, you're not running. You're changing. The Vian is inside you, isn't it?" Reese didn't answer, but his glow said enough. Jalen let out a breath. Then the stories were true. Later that night, they sat around a small table in the station's mess hall. The lights flickered. The food was cold, but the room was full of questions. Jalen leaned forward. "You don't know what's coming." Reese frowned. "The collector is gone." "For now," Jalen said. "But he's only a servant. There's something worse." He placed a small disc on the table. A hologram flickered to life. A giant being appeared, more shadow than shape. No face, just a crown of fire and a robe of stars. "The Devourer," Jalen said. "The first host of the Vian, the one who tried to turn it into a weapon. The Vian rejected him, but he still hunts it. Across time, across space." Reese felt cold. "He's real." "Yes, and now that the Vian has returned, he will too." Zara whispered. "He'll tear galaxies apart to take it back." Reese looked at his hands. "Then we fight." Jalen smiled faintly. "You sound like a Resistance captain already." Reese stood. "No, I'm just a cargo pilot who got dragged into something bigger than he understands. But I'm not letting this destroy everything. If the Vian chose me, then I'm going to earn it." Later, alone in the control room, Reese stood at the window again, staring at the stars. He raised his hand. Light gathered there, soft, warm, ready. He could hear voices across the galaxy now. Whispers of fear, cries for help. The collector was still searching. The devourer was rising. Armies were moving. Planets were trembling. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time, Reese wasn't watching back. He was answering. The Vian pulsed in his chest, alive and strong. "Are you ready?" it asked inside his mind. Reese nodded. "I don't have a choice anymore, do I?" "You always have a choice," Vian said. "That's why I chose you." The last stand. The stars were burning. From the windows of the ancient station, Reese watched them flicker, some dying, some vanishing in a blink, but they weren't going out naturally. They were being taken. "They've arrived," Zara whispered. Commander Jalen stood behind her, eyes fixed on the distant space where darkness now bled across the stars. "That's not a fleet. That's a void." Reese felt the Vian stirring in his chest again. A deep hum vibrated through his bones. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was warning. The Devourer was coming, and he wasn't alone. Hours earlier, Reese stood in the center of the control room, surrounded by old tech and dusty screens. Zara sat at the console, typing commands into a system that hadn't been touched in 20 years. "We've powered the station's shield grid," she said, "but it won't last long." Commander Jalen placed a worn map on the table. "We still have some pulse cannons on the south ring, and the emergency turrets are online. It's not much, but it's something." Reese nodded slowly. "It's enough for a message." Zara turned. "A message? We can't fight a god," Reese said, eyes glowing faintly, "but we can show the galaxy he can bleed." Now, the sky cracks. A thunderous sound tore through space, not from the speakers, not from the station, but from space itself. Reese ran to the window as a massive black shape pushed through a rip in the sky. It was not a ship. It was not a planet. It was him. The Devourer had arrived. He floated in silence, taller than mountains, wrapped in a storm of shadows. His eyes were white suns. His voice was a scream without sound. Zara fell to her knees. "He's breaking time." All around them, space began to twist, old wrecks moving in reverse, broken stars blinking into life again, screams echoing from futures not yet lived. Jalen grabbed Reese. "We hold the line here. No matter what. If you fall, we all fall." Reese placed a hand on Jalen's shoulder. "Not today." The first wave. Black ships poured from the Devourer's form, like blood from a wound. Thousands of them. Fast, armored, heartless. They hit the station like a storm. Sirens screamed. Cannons fired. The old resistance tech lit up again, roaring to life one last time. Reese ran through the halls, leading a small team of Jalen's fighters. He raised his hand, and the Vian answered. Walls closed with a thought. Doors locked with a blink, enemy soldiers frozen in light. Zara stayed in the command center, guiding every move, her voice calm even as the station shook. "They're breaking through the lower decks," she shouted. Reese raised both hands. Light burst from his palms, flooding the hallway. The enemy ships stopped midair, melted by pure force. But there were more. Endless waves. And Reese was growing weaker. The Devourer enters. With a pulse of black energy, the enemy cleared a path. The Devourer stepped into the station. The walls screamed. The lights died. Time paused. Jalen fired at him, but the bullets froze mid-air, rusted, and fell to dust before hitting him. Reese stepped forward, alone now, glowing brighter than ever. The Vian whispered inside him, calm but urgent. "This is not just a battle. This is your proving. This is your last stand." The Devourer spoke, voice like collapsing stars. "You are not worthy." Reese raised his chin. "I don't have to be. I just have to stand." The final fight. It wasn't like a normal battle. They didn't move. They willed. Light clashed with darkness. Thoughts became weapons. Emotions turned to fire. Reese screamed and sent waves of gold through the air. The Devourer absorbed them like smoke, then struck with a fist made of broken time. Reese flew backward, crashing into the wall. He coughed blood, stood again. His body burned, but his soul stood strong. The Vian spoke. One final choice. Reese saw Zora through the glass, trapped behind a wall of dark energy. Jalen was down. The station was falling apart. He looked at the Vian in his mind. "I choose life," he whispered. Then he gave everything. All his energy, all his light. He poured it into the Vian and became a beacon. The light wave. A pulse of golden light exploded from Reese, reaching every corner of the station. Time snapped back into place. Shadows screamed and vanished. The Devourer staggered. Reese walked forward slowly, his body glowing like a star. He placed a hand on the Devourer's chest and whispered, "You are not chosen." The Vian burned through him. The Devourer screamed for the first time in 1,000 years. Then he was gone. Not killed. Erased. Silence. The black ships vanished. The stars returned. The station was quiet again. Rhys collapsed. Zara ran to him, holding his body as the vine faded from his chest, returning to its small orb form. It hovered, quiet. Jalen limped into the room, half-burned, but alive. "He did it," he said softly. The pilot became the protector. Zara kissed Rhys's forehead. "You didn't fail," she whispered. And the vine glowed softly in her hands. The gem of peace. He wasn't breathing. Zara held Rhys in her arms, the floor still glowing faintly beneath them. Smoke curled from the walls. The old space station was cracked, broken, and silent, but alive, just like her heart. Barely. She pressed her hand to his chest. No heartbeat. "Rhys," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't do this." The vine hovered above them, soft and golden, flickering like a candle in the wind. For the first time since it was born, the gem looked uncertain. Then it pulsed once. Zara flinched. "Wait, what are you doing?" The vine dropped down, gently, and floated into Rhys's chest once more. And then his eyes opened. A new beginning. Rhys gasped for air, coughing hard. His body was weak, but his soul felt weightless. Zara laughed through tears, holding him tight. "You stubborn fool. You really weren't done yet." Rhys blinked slowly, trying to sit up. "Did we win?" She nodded, her voice soft. "The devourer is gone. The dark ships vanished. The timeline is safe." He looked down at his hands. They no longer glowed. "Where's the vine?" Zara smiled and touched his chest gently. "It's still inside you, but different now. It's quiet, at peace." Rhys frowned. "I don't feel powerful anymore." "You don't need power anymore," she said. "You chose peace. That was the final test." 3 weeks later, the Resistance Station was reborn. Engineers from nearby planets came after receiving Zora's emergency message. Survivors of past wars returned to rebuild. Hope returned, brick by brick, bolt by bolt. Rhys walked the halls slowly, nodding to workers and volunteers. They looked at him with awe, but also something more. Respect. Not for his powers, but for his choice. For surviving. For protecting. For standing. Jalen, now using a cane and missing part of his mechanical leg, met him in the war room. "You know you're a legend now, right?" he grinned. Rhys chuckled. "I was just a cargo pilot." "You were," Jalen replied. "Now you're the chosen." Zora's revelation. That evening, Rhys found Zora sitting by the observation window. She had removed her armor and wore a simple blue robe, her glowing tattoo now faint. He sat beside her. "You've been quiet," he said. She didn't look at him. "The vine is still inside you, but it's not sleeping." Rhys tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She turned to him. "It's changing. It's becoming something new, something no one has seen before." Rhys touched his chest. "I don't feel it anymore." "You will," she said, "when the time is right." She stood and walked away, but then paused. "And when that time comes, you'll have to choose again." A council divided. News of the Vian's rebirth spread fast. Leaders from across the galaxy demanded to see it. Some came offering friendship. Others came with threats. A council meeting was held at the station. Rhys stood at the center as the arguments echoed around him. "It belongs to science." "No, it belongs to the people." "The Vian should be used. It can end all war. It can start one too." Rhys raised a hand. Silence. He stepped forward, voice calm and steady. "The vine doesn't belong to any of you," he said. "It belongs to peace." One general sneered. "You dare speak for it?" Rhys nodded slowly. "No, it speaks through me, and it's watching." The lights flickered. The vine pulsed faintly under Rhys's skin. The council backed down. The twist. The Vian's final message. That night, as stars returned to their natural rhythm, Reese sat alone in the ship where it all began. He stared at the seat where Zara once lay. The Vian spoke inside his mind for the first time in days. You passed. Reese closed his eyes. I don't feel like a hero. You were never meant to be one. Reese frowned. Then what was I meant to be? A choice. A light. A message to all who chase power. Reese leaned forward. Is that why you chose me? A simple man with no army. Yes, because peace is always carried by those who are willing to stand alone. Then silence again. Reese understood. The Vian was not a weapon. It was a mirror. It showed who people truly were, and it had seen enough war. A quiet ending, and a new dawn. Months passed. The galaxy began to heal. The resistance returned, not as warriors, but as protectors, diplomats, and teachers. Reese declined all titles, medals, and riches. He lived simply, flying a small ship between planets, helping those in need, sometimes delivering food, sometimes carrying refugees, sometimes just offering hope. But when danger rose, the light inside him still flickered. Zara stayed by his side, not as a guardian, but as a partner, a witness to history. The last words of the Vian were never forgotten, etched into a silver plate on the station wall. They searched the stars for power, but found peace inside a human heart.